Directors Anthony and Joe Russo had an insurmountable task ahead of them. After 10 years of anticipation, Thanos just couldn't be a good villain, he had to be the best villain of the MCU, which meant he had to do some bad things, which he does, but the Russos knew that it would take more than that to make him the next Darth Vader. What makes Darth Vader so memorable, what makes him one of the greatest villains of all times, is his empathy. It's the facets that make him feel more like a hero rather than the villain. It's the things that make him feel like an underdog. The Russos understand this, and they put all of the things that made Vader great into Thanos. The challenge was evident from the very beginning. Thanos appeared beforehand in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but these appearances were one note, mustache twirling, broad stroke caricatures of a villain. In many ways, these appearances are like what we first had with Vader, imposing, intimidating, but one-dimensional. It was The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi that elevated these excellent foundations into something much more. And so with Infinity War, the Russos had the same challenge. How do you take a character that it seems impossible to look inside and make you see things his way? How can you take a character and show him doing despicable things and still feel by the end of it that his victory was most earned above all else? Whether or not you can agree with Thanos, there's no doubting that you could watch Infinity War and not come away from it knowing his core beliefs. With neo-Malthusian ideas he champions seemed so sincere, so selfless. When he utters them, he doesn't hide his intentions from anyone. More than that, he's prepared to argue for them. With such conviction, he could spin his beliefs to sound so benevolent. We see Thanos call his cleansing merciful, yet we see a child panic in fear as they violently cling to existence. We know what he says is indoctrination, yet whenever he is challenged on his morality, his past experiences can tip the balance in his favor every time. And it's more than just a defense of his belief system. Thanos champions himself to his confidence shines through in his every action. And he doesn't try to be humble to create a facade. He is who he is, something that could almost seem admirable.
You're strong.
Thanos is strong. He's generous. There's a level of humility to him, yet also so much arrogance. He's unapologetic about the fact that he's the toughest there is. If you need to see how wholeheartedly he believes in his ideals, just look at the smile he gives when he's finally alone at the end of the movie. He doesn't ask for thanks, he's just like a true hero. It's truly good, at least by his own standards. As a wise man once said, to be truly decent, it has to be
Without witness. Without reward.
He sheds his armor because he's a holy man on a peaceful journey, or at least with those intentions in mind. Of course, he breaks that peaceful mantra several times in the movie, but never in a way that seems untrue to his word. He attacks people, he kills, but only when it stands directly in the way of his quest. There are several instances where he can kill characters and he chooses not to. He subdues all of the Avengers at the end of the movie rather than killing them. He gets 2 instances to kill Peter Quill even after Quill has assaulted him, and he doesn't. These moments can help him justify his darker actions. He is a man of his word. for better or worse. It's how we know that he does indeed love Gamora before the Red Skull and the Soul Stone confirm, as much as it might be an abusive, controlling, destructive love that to many wouldn't be love at all, but to Thanos, he's doing what he thinks is best way of expressing it by his own code, a code that he never wavers from. And Thanos doesn't lie. Even Steve Rogers lies, but Thanos doesn't, and he can't respect anyone who does. Look at the way he treats Tana Leah Tovar. He has absolutely no time for him, as we've seen the Collector is duplicitous mercenary without seemingly any thought given to a being that is not himself. And when Thanos confronts him, his cowardness makes Thanos like him even less. Compare that to Peter Quill moments later, who shows all things that Tovar lacks: courage, will, honesty, and what does Thanos say?
I like you. Reality can be whatever I want.
That same scene shows us Thanos' intellect. He outthinks and manipulates everyone. He tricks the Guardians into playing their best hand, just as he does with Loki, only revealing his true knowledge of their goals and intentions at the point of which they have no way out. He moves them like pieces on a board until he is in total command of the situation. He casts the illusion of his death not because he wants to see Gamora cry, but because he knows it's the best way to divide the Guardians, the best way to make them vulnerable. He displays not only a keen tactical mind, but emotional intelligence as well. Could this theater of illusions be argued as a lie? Maybe, but Thanos never allows his character to be questioned, so neither do you. Incredibly, he still displays a semblance of integrity. He manipulates Peter Quill not by lying to him, but by testing him. Thanos wants Peter to know if he was in his place, he wouldn't hesitate to do what he promised. He's showing to him that he's better, that he's destined to win, without ever having to say it. But just because he's often 2 steps ahead of everyone else, it doesn't mean that he never finds himself in a tight spot. Part of why we end up wanting him to win in some sense, even if it's only just a little bit, because the film frames him as an underdog at key moments. Look at what's going on here. He's being ganged up by several characters, aggressively restraining him while he cries out in anguish. Suddenly, he's not the malicious figure. Despite all that has happened, the Avengers, they looked like the bullies. The same thing happens when Thor impales him. He revels in it, tortures him. Look at his expression on their faces. If you saw this moment without context, who would the film be communicating as the hero and who's the villain through this imagery? Even seeing him fight and beat the Hulk is something that we can feel oddly satisfying. The Hulk is rarely beaten, and never this easily. Thanos beats him through skill, something we can again find commendable. Seeing a character despite vulnerability, no matter who it is, makes us care, and when they manage to call out from an intense situation against all the odds, keep fighting, we can respect that. It makes all of Thanos' triumphs feel a little bit more earned. His vulnerability perfectly complements his determination. If we see him vulnerable too much, we might not be impressed by his efforts. And if we display determination without overcoming struggle, we'd want to see him fail. His vulnerability and his determination are perfectly balanced. You get the sense throughout the movie that he is unstoppable through sheer will, alone forgetting any other factor. He will complete his quest no matter what it takes. His speed, his ferocity, it's almost unmatched. He sees determinations in others as admirable, even if he disagrees with them. The look he gives Cap when he puts all of his might into stopping the gauntlet, the soothing words he gives Wanda after witnessing her kill the person she loves. Of course, something he can empathize with after his battle with Tony Stark, someone who he sees himself in, and of course he sees it in the younger Gamora. He doesn't think lesser of anyone unless they stand opposition of his beliefs. He always notices the bravery in others, but always makes sure that he can match whatever they throw at him. He will not be outdone by anyone. He has the gumption to prove it. We've looked at how other characters have lost something in this movie. Thor loses his brother, his best friend, half his people. Tony loses his soul after fighting to save it for 6 years. Steve loses his Bucky and his Sam. Rocket loses his son. Okoye and the Wakandas lose their king, but Thanos loses something too. It might not be on the same scale, but Gamora is the only thing he has that's still good in this world, the only part of him that the universe can accept. His creed, his integrity, his cunning, his vulnerability, his determination, it all bunches together to concoct a portrait of a living, breathing character. But without Gamora, Thanos would not work. If Darth Vader has a Luke Skywalker, a character to ground him emotionally, if his soul is irredeemable to us, an unbreakable cord to let us see behind the mask, then Gamora is surely Thanos' Luke. Just like Darth Vader, Thanos thinks that he's doing is born out of love. He looks at Gamora and sees everything that he did for her, everything, no matter how black it was, in service of trying to make her fend for herself.
Then in doing so, made you the fiercest woman in the galaxy.
Russos wanted to make Thanos do bad things, and he does continuously throughout the movie. But Gamora's death is the pinnacle of this. It's more than just a murder, it's more than just villainy and maliciousness. What makes this his worst atrocity is his connection to Gamora, the way in which he very nearly doesn't go through with this terrible deed, but soldiers on anyway, and we can see parallels with this moment. But instead of doing the right thing when the times finally come, Thanos takes the darkest path. It is the paradoxical nature of this deed that makes it feel so despicable. Wiping out the universe is a statistic, unbiased, random, but this is calculated, destructive, and the purest evil. What makes Infinity War so good is the fact that no one really wins, not without paying the price. And because of all of this, Thanos deserved to win. Not in a moral sense, not because he was the kindest or the most assertive or the one that did the right thing. He didn't do any of that. He's an evil man. The movie ultimately makes it clear that he deserved to win because he wanted it more than anyone else. He deserved it because he tried the hardest and was willing to break himself and take the hits and kept moving forward. Thanos was the only one that was aware of who he was, aware of his flaws. He didn't wear a mask and didn't hide behind a facade. He didn't trust on hope or put his trust in anyone other than himself. Because of these six traits and his rigid adherence, no matter what the cost, he's the only person in the universe who had the will to carry out the thing he felt he had to do. Thank you for watching.